I had been pet sitting professionally for 6 years, not casually, not as a favor, professionally with a registered profile on a licensed care platform, full bonding, full insurance, and over 200 completed bookings with a 5-star average rating across all of them. I do meet and greets before every first booking without exception. I walk through the entire property with the owner. I note the food storage, the leash hooks, the emergency vet information, the location of every exit. I ask detailed questions about the animal's health history, behavioral triggers, separation anxiety tendencies, and nighttime routines. I do not show up to a job unprepared. I treat every house like a professional workspace because that is what it is. I have been doing this long enough that almost nothing in a client home surprises me anymore. I am laying all of that out before I tell you what happened in that house outside of Richmond, because I need you to understand that the situation was wrong from the very beginning, and I did not know it. I did everything correctly. The problem was already there before I arrived. The booking was a 4-night stay in a colonial-style house on a cul-de-sac in a suburb west of Richmond, Virginia. Large house, 2-car garage, one of those neighborhoods where every front lawn is the same length and all the mailboxes match the shutters. The client had 1 dog, a 4-year-old Weimaraner, and had booked me 3 weeks in advance through the platform. She said she was flying to Seattle to visit family and would be gone from Wednesday evening through Sunday morning. The meet and greet the week before went completely smoothly. The dog was friendly and well-adjusted. The house was organized and clean. She walked me through everything I needed and paid the full balance before I arrived. On paper, it was a standard job. I pulled up Wednesday evening around 6:30. Her white Honda Pilot was not in the driveway. The garage door was closed. I looked through the garage's side window and both bays were empty. I used the lockbox code she had provided to retrieve the front door key and let myself in. The dog met me at the door, tail working, ears relaxed, the standard Weimaraner greeting from the dog that remembered me from the meet and greet. I got him fed immediately and took him out to the fenced backyard. The air was cold and smelled like dead leaves and chimney smoke drifting over from somewhere further down the street. The cul-de-sac was quiet, no movement, no cars, a completely normal Wednesday evening in a Virginia suburb. I settled in around 7:30. I had my laptop, a bag of groceries, and a planned routine. The house had that specific stillness that empty houses have when the heat is running low and there is nothing happening inside them. The dog climbed onto the couch next to me and put his head in my lap and went to sleep. I worked on some administrative stuff for about 2 hours and went to bed in the guest room around 10:30. I woke up sometime after 2 in the morning. The dog was not in the room. I had left the door cracked because he was a mover at night, which the client had mentioned at the meet and greet. I lay still and listened. I could hear him somewhere in the house. He was not moving. He was making a low, continuous vocalization that I have heard from other dogs in certain specific situations. Not a bark, not a whimper. The sound a dog makes when it is fixed completely on something it cannot process and does not know how to respond to. I knew that sound. I knew what it meant. I got up and followed it down the hallway. He was standing at the end of the hall about 4 feet from the door to the master bedroom. His body was rigid. His tail was down and pressed against his back leg. His eyes were locked on the door. He had not heard me come up behind him. He was entirely focused on whatever was in front of him. I put my hand on his back and he was tense through every muscle group. The full body tension I have only felt in dogs during thunderstorms or when something genuinely alarmed them. Not nervousness, not anxiety, something much more active than that. I told myself it was the new environment. Even well-adjusted dogs have odd nights in unfamiliar spaces. I walked him back to the guest room, closed the door, and got back into bed. He stood at the guest room door and did not lie down for the rest of the night. I lay there and listened to the house. For about 10 minutes, nothing. Then I heard the cough. It came from the direction of the master bedroom. One cough, low, controlled. The specific sound a person makes when they need to cough and are actively trying to suppress the volume of it. Not a clearing of the throat, not a mechanical sound from the HVAC. A human cough shaped by someone who did not want to be loud. I sat up. I went through every explanation methodically. I have trained myself to do that before I react, because reacting without thinking is how people make bad decisions in unfamiliar environments. I thought about whether the sound could have come from outside, through the window. The guest room window was closed and latched, and the nearest neighboring house on that side of the property was at least 40 feet away through a dense hedgerow. A sound that specific and that directional does not travel through closed glass and 40 feet of outdoor distance and arrive in a quiet room at that clarity and volume. It does not work that way. I thought about a television in the master bedroom. I had not heard a television at any point during the evening. The house had been genuinely quiet. A television would have produced continuous ambient sound, not a single isolated cough surrounded by silence. I thought about a white noise machine or radio running on a timer. That was the most available rational option. I held onto it. I told myself it was a timed device producing audio in the room, and I lay back down and kept my eyes open. I did not sleep again for the rest of the night. At 5 in the morning, I took the dog out to the backyard. It was fully dark and cold, and the cul-de-sac was completely still. I stood on the back patio and looked up at the master bedroom window. It faced the yard. The curtains were drawn, no light behind them. I watched for 2 full minutes. Nothing moved behind that glass. I went back inside and made coffee and sent the client a message through the platform at 5:15. I kept it casual. I said the dog had a restless night and I was just checking in to make sure everything on her end had gone smoothly. She replied 40 minutes later. She said her flight had been delayed by weather and she had made the decision to drive instead since rebooking was too complicated at that hour. She said she was about 4 hours west of Richmond, pulled over at a truck stop in West Virginia, trying to sleep in her car. She was not in the house. She had been driving west since the previous evening. I sat at the kitchen table with that information and did not move for a while. I went through the remaining explanations. A family member with a spare key she had not mentioned. A maintenance worker she had forgotten to tell me about. Someone who had accessed the property before I arrived and was still inside. I went through all of it. None of it changed what I had heard. A human cough from behind the closed master bedroom door at 2 in the morning. In a house where I was the only person who was supposed to be. I called 911 at 6:15. I told the dispatcher I was a pet sitter. I was alone in a client's residence. I had heard an unexplained sound from a locked interior room and I wanted an officer to check the property. I kept my voice level. I took the dog to the backyard and waited there in the cold, with the back door shut behind me. 2 officers arrived in 9 minutes. I walked them through everything. They went directly to the master bedroom door. The lock was a push-button interior privacy lock. One of the officers used a coin to release the mechanism from the hallway side. The room was empty. No person, no radio or white noise device running. The window was locked from the inside. The walk-in closet was cleared completely, but on the carpet in the far corner of the room, the section the client had mentioned was damaged from a previous cat. There were 2 areas where the carpet pile was compressed flat, side by side, oval-shaped, consistent in size and placement with where a person would stand if they had been standing in that specific corner for an extended period. The carpet pile directly surrounding those 2 spots was at full height. Only those 2 areas were pushed down. The officers noted the impressions in their report. They told me they could not draw conclusions from carpet compression alone. They cleared the exterior and found nothing. The house was empty. They could not tell me anything about the cough. I left that morning. I called the platform from the driveway, submitted a full incident report, and they coordinated a refund. The client was cooperative. She said she had not given the spare key or the lockbox code to anyone else. She said she had no explanation. I still pet sit. I have not taken another overnight booking in a house where I have not personally watched the owner pull out of the driveway, confirmed their location through a second channel, and done a full room-by-room walkthrough before closing the front door behind them. Every room, including every room I am told I do not need to go into. A clear driveway tells you a car is gone. It tells you nothing else. I know that now in a way I cannot unknow. I grew up in a small town in central Indiana, about 20 miles outside of Kokomo. I know rural properties the way people who grew up on them know them. I know the difference between a house that has been empty for 12 hours and one that has been empty for 3 days. The smell is different. The air quality is different. In a house that has been genuinely empty for a full day or more, the air settles into a flat, cool stillness. No body heat, no circulation from a person moving room to room. The surfaces retain their temperature. The ambient humidity drops slightly because no one is breathing, showering, or making coffee. I notice these things the way most people notice whether a light is on or off. It is background information that I process automatically. I have been doing pet sitting on rural Indiana properties for 4 years, mostly dogs and barn cats, with a few horse properties mixed in for basic feed checks. I know what a normal empty house feels and smells like. That background matters because it is what made me certain, before I had any other evidence, that something was wrong in that house. The booking was at a property about 12 miles outside of Kokomo, on a county road, deep enough out that the nearest neighbor was a quarter mile away, and the only light you could see from the back porch at night was one farmhouse lamp on the eastern horizon. 18 acres total. A main house, a detached 2-bay garage, and a small outbuilding used for tool storage. The client had 2 beagles and 3 semi-furrow barn cats. He was a single man in his late 40s who said he was driving down to his brother's place in southern Kentucky for the long weekend and would be back Monday morning. He walked me through the property on a Thursday afternoon. The beagles were older and calm. The cats wanted food and water at the outbuilding door once a day and wanted nothing else from a person. The job was straightforward. I arrived Friday morning at 8. His truck, a dark red crew cab I had seen at the walkthrough, was not in the driveway. Both garage bays were empty. I verified that by looking through the garage's side window before I approached the front door. The spare key was under a flat rock beside the porch steps, exactly where he said it would be. I let myself in. The beagles met me in the entryway. Both were relaxed. Tail wags, no tension, the comfortable greeting of dogs that recognized me and associated me with their morning routine. I fed them and checked their water and went out to the outbuilding to leave the cat food at the door. The morning was gray and cold, with a heavy low sky, and the fields around the property were flat brown, and the air smelled like wet soil, and the rain that was probably coming by afternoon. Everything read as normal. I went back inside to wash my hands at the kitchen sink. The coffee maker was on the right side of the sink. I reached past it to get to the soap dispenser. My forearm brushed the glass carafe. It was warm. I pulled my hand back. I touched it deliberately, with my full palm flat against the glass. The carafe was warm, not the ambient warmth of a room temperature object sitting on a counter. The specific, retained heat of a glass carafe that had been used in the last 1 to 2 hours and left on a warming plate that had since been switched off. I looked at the warming plate. Off. The machine was not running. The indicator light was dark, but the coffee inside was dark and the glass was warm, and there was about half a pot remaining. I stood at that counter and ran through the physics of it. Retained heat in a glass carafe at room temperature. A standard glass carafe at room temperature will hold residual warmth for roughly 90 minutes to 2 hours after the machine cuts off. After that, the heat equalizes with the ambient room temperature and the carafe reads cold. He had been gone since Thursday afternoon. It was now 8 in the morning on Friday. That was anywhere from 16 to 18 hours. A glass carafe does not stay warm for 16 hours without an active heat source. It does not work that way. I know how coffee makers work because I use one every morning. The math did not produce a warm carafe. I thought about whether the maker had a programmable auto brew timer. I checked the machine. Basic model, no programmable features. On-off toggle and a brew button. No timer function at all. I checked the outlet behind it to see if there was a smart plug attached. There was not. I took a photo of the carafe and its temperature display and sent it to him through the platform messaging app at 8:20. I kept the message neutral. I said I noticed the coffee maker seemed to have been used recently, and I wanted to check if he had a neighbor with a house key who might have come by. I framed it as a routine question. I went back to the dogs while I waited. He replied at 9:50. He said he had made coffee Thursday morning before he finished packing and must have forgotten to empty the pot. He apologized and told me to dump it out. Thursday morning, 16 to 18 hours before I was standing there, he wanted me to accept that the physics of glass and temperature had simply failed to apply in his kitchen. I poured the coffee out. I did not argue, but I did not stop thinking about it. I spent the afternoon doing extra walkthroughs of the property. I told myself I was being thorough for professional reasons. The beagles were calm both times I went through the house. That was the thing I kept referencing internally. Dogs read their environments more accurately and more immediately than people do. Both beagles were eating normally, sleeping in their usual spots in the living room, and had not shown any of the behavioral signals that indicate stress or disturbance. I held on to that. That night at 9, I was on the couch in the living room with my earbuds in, watching something on my phone. I took the earbuds out to get up for water. The house was quiet. I stood at the kitchen sink and filled a glass. I heard a footstep on the floor directly above me. One footstep, weighted and deliberate. The kind of impact a human foot makes on an old farmhouse floor when the person is moving at a slow, controlled pace. Not a pipe shifting or a house settling in the cold pace. Not a pipe shifting, not a pace, not of the biscuit. Those sounds have a quick, brief quality, and then they resolve. This had weight behind it. Sustained contact with the floor. A footstep. I stood at the sink and counted. 45 seconds of silence. Then a second one. Same quality. Same deliberate pace. Moving from a position above the kitchen toward the direction of the upstairs hallway. I went through every other explanation I had. Squirrels in the attic produce rapid, light scratching sounds with small, fast impacts. What I heard was slow and heavy. The barn cats were semi-feral and never came inside. He had confirmed that at the walkthrough. He had said they had never once entered the main house in the 3 years he had owned the property. I was not experiencing sleep deprivation. I had slept well in my own bed the previous night and had been awake and functional all day. My perception was not impaired in any way I could identify. I went to the living room. I put both leashes on both beagles without waking them completely and walked them out the front door to my truck. I put them in the back seat. I got in the driver's seat. I drove to the end of the gravel driveway and called the county sheriff's office from the county road. A deputy arrived in 20 minutes. He went through the house while I waited in truck with the dogs. He was inside for 12 minutes. He came out and said the upstairs was clear, both rooms empty and undisturbed. Nothing visible in the walk-in storage area. He noted that the rear bedroom window was unlocked. He said I should mention it to the homeowner. He said the property was clear as far as he could determine. I asked him about the window specifically. He said it was unlocked from the inside, which meant the mechanism had been released from within the room, not from outside. I stayed at a motel in Kokomo that night. I came back Saturday morning for the animals and did the same both remaining days. The client returned Monday as planned. He tipped me in cash and said the unlocked window was probably his own oversight. I drove home thinking about that window the entire way. Unlocked from the inside, in a room that was supposed to have been empty since Thursday, with warm coffee in the kitchen at 8 Friday morning, and a footstep on the floor above me at 9 Friday night. I have no single piece of evidence that would hold up as proof of anything. I have a deputy's report. I have a photo of a warm carafe. I have my own memory of what a footstep sounds like on an old farmhouse floor. That is all I have. But those things exist, and I cannot make them not exist. I do not take rural overnight bookings anymore without a second channel location confirmation from the owner before I close the front door. An empty driveway on a rural property 12 miles from town on a county road at 8 in the morning means nothing by itself. I understand that now with a clarity I did not have before that weekend. I am 28 years old. I live in the greater Portland, Oregon area, and I work as a licensed veterinary technician. I have been working in small animal clinical practice for 5 years. My job requires a specific and consistent skill set, which is the ability to assess a situation accurately under pressure, rule out explanations that are not supported by evidence, and act on what is actually present rather than what I assumed would be there. I give injections to animals that are trying to bite me. I monitor anesthetic depth during surgeries and adjust in real time. I do not freeze. I do not project. I look at what is in front of me and I work with it. I am laying that out because what I am about to describe is something I resisted accepting for as long as I could. I tested every available explanation before I accepted that something was genuinely wrong in that house. None of the explanations held, and when I finally left, I left because the evidence forced me out, not because I panicked. The distinction matters. The client was a woman in her early 60s who lived alone in a well-kept ranch-style house in a residential neighborhood in southwest Portland. Single story, clean yard, mature trees on the lot line. She had 2 older indoor cats. She was flying to Tucson to visit her daughter and would be gone from Friday through Monday. She had a good review history on the platform, and the meet and greet on the Wednesday before the booking was straightforward. The house was organized and calm, with a lot of natural light and the particular smell of a home occupied by 2 elderly cats and a lot of healthy houseplants. She walked me through the feeding schedule, the litter box locations in the laundry room, the Wi-Fi information. She told me I was welcome to use the couch or the guest room. She mentioned that her own bedroom was kept locked for privacy and that the key was not on the property and not needed for my stay. She showed me the locked bedroom door in passing. Closed. Standard hollow core door with a keyed knob lock. I noted it and moved on. I arrived Friday around 4 in the afternoon. Her silver Subaru Forester was not in the driveway. I confirmed the front door was locked and used the app-enabled smart lock code she had given me. Both cats came to investigate within about 60 seconds of me stepping inside. The house was dim and warm and quiet in the expected way. I fed the cats, cleaned both litter boxes, and settled at the kitchen table with my laptop. Everything was as it was supposed to be. At around 6 o'clock, I did a standard walkthrough of the property, out of professional habit. I do this at the start of every overnight booking. Front room, dining room, kitchen, hallway, bathroom, guest room, gate ringed. I noted the master bedroom door as I passed it, closed. I continued to the end of the hall and back. Nothing unusual. At around 6:40, I went back down the hallway to use the bathroom. I slowed down as I passed the master bedroom door without fully processing why. I stopped. I stood in the hallway and looked at the door. Then I looked at the gap between the bottom of the door and the carpet. There was a thin line of light running the full length of it. Warm yellow. Dim, like a bedside lamp on a low setting, not an overhead fixture, not a bright line, a consistent low, steady glow along the entire bottom edge of the door. I stood there and looked at it. I thought about timer lamps. A lot of people program lamps to click on in the evening to create the appearance of occupancy from outside. That is a completely common and reasonable home security measure. That was the first explanation I reached for, and it was a legitimate one. I told myself it was a timer lamp and I went back to the kitchen. At 8:30, I walked past the hallway again. The light was still coming from under the door. At 10, still on. A timer lamp turns things on and it turns things off. Most residential timers run a 2 to 4 hour window. This lamp had been on for every minute of the 4+ hours I had been observing it. I did not know when it had come on before I first noticed it at 6:40. I only knew it had not gone off. I sat with both cats on the couch and thought it through carefully. Timer malfunction was possible. Older mechanical timers sometimes stick in the on position. That was still a viable explanation. I decided I would check again in the morning and went to bed in the guest room at 11. I woke up at 3:15 in the morning. Both cats were on the floor at the foot of the guest room bed, sitting side by side, facing the door to the hallway. Neither was moving. Neither was making a sound. In 5 years of clinical animal work, I have developed a reliable read of feline alert behavior. Two cats in perfect parallel stillness, facing the same fixed point in complete silence, is not neutral behavior. That is an active sensory response to something outside the room. Something had their attention in the hallway. I lay still and listened. The house was quiet. Then I heard it from the direction of the master bedroom. Pages. The slow, soft rustle of paper pages being turned one at a time. The specific sound of someone reading a physical book and moving through it at a relaxed pace. It was clear. It was directional. It was coming from behind that locked door. I picked up my phone and opened the platform messaging app and sent her a check-in message at 3:17 in the morning. I said the cats were doing well and I was just touching base. I sent it expecting no response for hours given the time difference with Tucson. She replied in 4 minutes. She said she was awake due to the time change and thanked me for checking. She asked if everything was okay. I asked her directly if she had a lamp on a timer in the master bedroom. She said she did not have any timers in the bedroom. She said the room had a bedside lamp and a ceiling fixture, both controlled by standard wall switches. I put my shoes on in the dark. I did not turn the overhead light on. I packed my charger and everything I had brought. Getting both cats into their shared carrier in a dark room took about 4 minutes. One of them got behind the bed frame and I had to reach in with both hands and pull her out. I carried the carrier and my bag to the front door and disarmed the smart lock and went to my car. I put the carrier in the back seat. I drove away from that house at 3:30 in the morning without looking back at the bedroom window. I called 911 from a gas station on Barber Boulevard. I told the dispatcher I was a pet sitter confirmed to be alone in a residence. The owner was out of state. I had observed light under the locked master bedroom door for multiple hours, and I had heard what sounded like a person turning pages inside the room at 3 in the morning. 2 officers responded. They called me back 40 minutes later and said the house was clear. The master bedroom was empty. The bedside lamp was on, wall switch in the on position. No device or timer found. No one in the room or the closet. One of the officers described the nightstand, a paperback with a bookmark in it and a pair of bifocal reading glasses resting on top of the closed cover. I called her and described what they had found. She said the glasses were hers. She said she must have forgotten them in her rush to catch her flight. She said she wore them every night before bed. I went back to the house at 8 in the morning to collect the items I had left behind. Both cats were still in my back seat. I went into the master bedroom. The lamp was still on. The book and glasses were still on the nightstand. I picked the glasses up. I handle reading glasses constantly in clinical practice. Owners put them on to review intake paperwork and discharge instructions dozens of times a week. I hand them back regularly. I know precisely and without any ambiguity the difference between frames that have been sitting on a cold surface for hours and frames that have recently been on a warm human face. Those frames were warm. I set them back on the nightstand. I got my bag. I left. She left me a 4-star review 2 days later. She noted that I had left unexpectedly, mid-booking without sufficient communication. That review is still on my profile. I have read it many times. I have never responded to it because there is nothing I could write in a public review response that would explain warm glasses in an empty locked room at 8 in the morning. I know what I felt. I have felt cold glasses and warm glasses thousands of times. Those frames had been on someone's face recently. The room was empty. The window was locked from the inside. And she was in Tucson. I have not taken another overnight pet sitting booking since then, and I have not made any plans to change that.